Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you today. Welcome to AI-powered transcription of handwritten documents, tools and techniques. My name is Nicole Elder-Dyer, and I'm happy to be here with you today about this important and exciting topic. I'm coming at the topic from that of a genealogist and not of a technologist, so I'm hopeful that my perspectives will be helpful to all of you. Please silence your electronic devices, and no audio or video recording is allowed, but I don't mind if you do take a photo here and there if there's something you want to remember that's not in the syllabus. Our outline for today includes discussing transcription benefits and basics. After we start off with that, we will talk about a tool called Transcribus. Then we will talk about large language models, a tool called Transcription Pearl, the FamilySearch full text search, and using our transcriptions in other ways and transforming them. What is transcription? In genealogy, transcription is a word-for-word, character-for-character rendering that aims to capture every detail of original sources exactly as it appears. Spelling, spacing, punctuation, abbreviations, and even mistakes or peculiarities are preserved. What are the benefits of doing a transcription? Well, first of all, it helps familiarize yourself with the record's contents. It helps you find evidence for your research question. Sometimes we skip over transcribing documents that are indexed, and we only see the few things that were put on the indexing page, and we miss valuable evidence. Also, transcription can provide evidence and insights into your research subject's neighbors, community, culture, and time period. Those witnesses on that deed, they're important too. You can get ideas for further research, and it makes the source more readable for yourself, your client, and your relatives. I think that's one of the main purposes of transcription. And of course, extracting all that important information and evidence. So, how do we make a transcription? We want to preserve the original text exactly as it appears in the document. So we don't want to correct it or change it. Anytime there's a misspelling, lack of punctuation, even superscripted letters, as they did in the past so often, insertions with a caret, and ink blots, we want to record all of these things, even the irregularities on the page. If a word is stuck in the fold and we can't read it, if there's a fold at the corner and we can't read that word, we preserve that. One way that we preserve all those ink blots and irregularities is using square brackets. That indicates that it's a piece of text that is not on the record, but it's the transcriber's notes. So if you have illegible letters, you can use square brackets to indicate the letters that you could make out and the ones you couldn't with question marks, like this example with 2 question marks and then R-A-H. Probably it's Sarah, but what if it's not? We don't want to make that assumption if we can't read it. Also, we can use square brackets for anything that we want to include, like our analysis of the legibility of the document, or just noting that it's on the next page now. Another part of transcription is converting obsolete letter forms to their modern equivalent. I'll talk about that in a minute. But also in square brackets is the Latin word sic, S-I-C, and that means that you intentionally left the incorrect spelling because that's how it was in the document. We only use this judiciously when it's a very egregious error and our reader might think that we messed up, and we want to let them know we didn't mess up, it was just like that in the document. But if the document is full of weird spellings, we don't put sic after every single one. That would become difficult to read. We're looking at trying to make it readable for ourselves and for our clients and for our relatives. Here are 3 examples of obsolete letter forms that I have found commonly in my work. There might be others in your work. The first is the thorn, and it looks kind of like a P. The modern equivalent is a TH. It was used in Old and Middle English, but now when we transcribe, we use the TH when we see the thorn. In my work, I've seen this most commonly in colonial America, and not so much in the 1800s. You've probably seen a long S before. Those are commonly confused for the letter F, In printed format, it does look a lot like an F, but often the long S will be in the middle of a word or next to another S, like it's shown in the last row. So when you have the long S and the S, it might get transcribed incorrectly as FS. So the way that we do it is we transcribe it as SS and not F, because it's an S. It was just a different way of writing an S in the past. So the takeaway from this slide: when you transcribe obsolete letter forms, we transcribe them with the modern equivalent. Now we will talk about a wonderful tool called Transcribus. You can go to Transkribus's website at www.transkribus.org. It was created by the scholars at the University of Innsbruck in Austria. It is used to transcribe images in your internet browser. It has many additional features beyond transcription, including allowing you to collaborate with a team. In fact, it was created for the use mainly of European archives who are collaborating with a bunch of people to make their archive searchable. You can also make documents automatically transcribed that are multi-pages. You can train a custom AI if you have one person's hand in multiple pages, like hundreds of pages, and that will make the model able to recognize that person's hand in any future documents. You can even publish historical documents on a searchable website through the Transcribus platform. The Transkribus transcription process begins with uploading a PDF or image files. You can create collections, like folders, with images of a certain type. First, layout recognition breaks down the image into text regions and lines. If your image is complex, with tables or multiple columns, you will want to run a layout recognition separately and manually so that you can get the correct layout first. Then you will choose the language and the model and run the text recognition. After you've done the layout recognition, if you needed to, you will click on Recognize Text. If you only click Recognize Text, it will do an automatic layout recognition within that, but you won't be able to manually correct it. You can recognize several images at once or one at a time. The progress is saved in a jobs table so that you can leave and come back and see the progress. You don't have to wait on that same web page. It will work in the background. When it's done, you can review it in a side-by-side image viewer and make corrections. Then you can either save it, download it as a PDF, as a Word file, and many other options for exporting it, or simply copy and paste the transcription somewhere else. An 18th century deed that I transcribed in several different platforms for this lecture is this one from Solomon Allen to Samuel Watt in Rockingham County, North Carolina. And this is from April 13th, 1792. It was on page 294 of the North Carolina Deed Book, Volume C. We're going to use this in several slides to see how well the transcription tools work. Okay, let's go through the process so you can see what it looks like in Transkribus. So first, you upload a document image into collections. The one we're going to do today is the one I had labeled Baldy Dyer, although I didn't name it correctly because it was actually a deed between Solomon Allen. But my ancestor, or supposed ancestor, that I'm interested in is one of the witnesses on the deed, Baldy and Elisha Dyer, who I think are brothers. And that's why I'm using this deed. All right, so now when we click on the deed and select it, we can then click on Recognize. When we do that, we get a model selector that opens on the right. We can choose the recognition type, so maybe we want to choose to recognize the layout or recognize the text. Right now we're just going to recognize text because this is a very simple layout of just regular paragraphs. There's no tables or irregular columns like you might see in a tax record. Then you choose the recognition model, and you want to look at models that are in the correct language and time period. So the one that I selected here is called Transcribus English Handwriting M3. You can also see the CER, character error rate, and that tells you how many errors the model usually has, which are the differences between what it transcribed and the ground truth. I might mention ground truth a couple times. It's just a term that means the perfectly transcribed text that was given to the model to train it to know what is correct. And then it applies that to all future documents that it sees and tries to transcribe it the same way. So this model had about a 5% error rate, which is average for Transkribus, but there are some with lower error rates. Okay, here's a little bit more about the Transkribus English handwriting model. And you can compare it to other models. After clicking Transcribe, you can see the server jobs on the side. These will work until you come back to it and see that they're done, and then you can click on them when they're finished. So it's nice to be able to leave and come back. Here's what my deed looked like when it was finished transcribing. As you can see, it recognized the text area with green and the lines with blue. Then we have on the right the region that has the transcription on the side. And so if you can see, it transcribed the number of the page and the parenthesis correctly, 294. And then in line 2, it transcribed the flourish on the A of Alan incorrectly as an O. Then it transcribed the name Alan Solomon to Walt Samuel instead of Watt Samuel. And then it couldn't understand deed for 25 acres. So it got kind of close. It put decaphor, 25 A's. So it's kind of close, but you can see that the certain things messed up. As you look through this, you may see certain errors, but you also can probably see that it does a very good job reading handwritten text. And some of the times the surname Watt is transcribed, it is correct, such as Samuel Watt in the 5th line. And Samuel Watt's son is actually supposed to be Samuel Watt June for junior in the 5th line. So it gets close enough where you can really see and make those corrections pretty quickly. So in Transkribus, we have multiple types of models. The standard models were trained on Pilea open source handwritten text recognition engine. And this was used to train most of the standard models. They also have table models that are trained to recognize tabular data, and super models. Don't you love that word? Super models, which are newer and more accurate language model and incorporating language models. And they are baked in, actually, so the language model helps figure out the context around the words and get a more accurate transcription. So these supermodels get a much lower character error rate. At Transkribus, you can transcribe in many languages. I listed some of them here, but this was a year ago when I made that list, so they may have added more, so check their website. But there are 155 plus models, and there are multiple models for different languages, which is why some of those have a number after them. So how do you choose the right model? Well, you need to think about the type of text. Do you have handwritten text, printed text, or both? Do you have one language or a mix of languages? Also about languages, do you have the current form of the language or an old form of the language? And then look at how many words the model has been trained on and what time period were the documents created in. And then finally, definitely look at the character error rate. So if you see below here that you can unlock super models for a fee. So Transkribus is free to use unless you want to try their best models. Here's a little bit more about the model we used, the M3, and you can see that CER accuracy rate highlighted as 5%. You can also see the training set size, and it's trained on 11,000 pages. The centuries that were used in the training were 18 through the 20th century, and it was trained on handwritten text. So if you're using a printed text document, you'll want to choose a different model. There are some advanced options that make using Transkribus even better, and the first is a language model. These language models understand words really well, and using the language model increases the accuracy. And this is because of the ability of AI language models to predict likely words and phrases. This isn't available for supermodels because it's already baked into the model. Also, the Smart Search is a great advanced feature. This stores many alternatives to each word to help you search the collection of documents and find a word you're looking for, even if it wasn't transcribed correctly. So you won't see all those extra words on the forward-facing part of the transcription if you choose this option, but when you try to search through 50 pages of an appendation file, you will hopefully be able to find the name that you're looking for. Let's learn more about these supermodels. These are transformer-based text recognition models that are great at natural language, helping decipher many types of documents. These are the most advanced models created at Transkribus so far, and they outperform the Pilea models. They have two parts. First, the optical recognition, where they're looking with the computer vision at the strokes and the lines. Then they incorporate the language model improvements. They can deal with more than a single language, old and new forms of the language, and handwritten and printed text. These supermodels can help you quickly create the ground truth for training your own custom model. So if you have a diary of an ancestor who had hundreds of pages that you'd like to transcribe, use a supermodel first to help you transcribe it accurately, then go through and fix it up so that your ground truth is perfect. Then you can transcribe the rest of the pages with the model you created. This works really well if you have over 75 pages to transcribe. Usually, to train a model, you need at least 75 pages. Supermodels require a subscription. So I recommend trying it out for 1 month so that you can see if it would be useful to you. So let's talk a little more about training a private model. If you have a large collection of documents with a unique writing style, penmanship, or language, you can train your own model to increase accuracy. You'll transcribe between 25 and 75 pages manually, or more if the documents are heterogeneous, meaning they have different hands at different stages of life or something. You can speed up the process by using a similar base model or a supermodel first, and then manually correct it. To improve the character error rate, make sure the training data is accurate and consistent. Check the baselines and make sure to add more data. Well, let's talk about using Transkribus for printed documents. It does do printed documents as well. It's much more accurate than your run-of-the-mill OCR, optical character recognition, that you've seen in the past at like newspaper websites and things like that. It helps with faded or problematic images. I uploaded this obituary of my husband's ancestor, Martha Jane Coxwell Bailey, and ran a Transkribus print model on it using the language model. The transcription was almost perfect, so it was very useful in that way. Here's a more difficult one. Should we try this? This is an article in a newspaper from 1842 in the Bangor, Maine, Daily Whig and Courier. And it's a list of people who are filing for bankruptcy, if you couldn't read that top word. Do you think that the AI model will be able to read that word? Let's find out. Here's the OCR transcription from a newspaper website. How does that look? Looks great. Let's try using the Transkribus Print M1 model. This one has a character error rate of 2.2%, and it was trained on print. It can use German, English, Dutch, or French languages. Putting it in the model gave us some pretty good results, but some pretty bad results at the same time. One thing I noticed is that it had a struggle with recognizing the layout. I highlighted line number 10. Line number 10 for Rufus Fowler is out of order. It's part of line number 10, but line number 11 is before it. So we need to fix the layout before this is going to work correctly. I ran this layout last year, so I decided I would try again and see if it got any better. So in the past, what I did last year with this was I tried to fix the regions and the lines. So if you're wondering how to fix the layout manually, here's how you do it. You can either go back and run a layout recognition, or you can just edit the layout if you just see one problem to fix. So I wanted to try that. There's a way to edit the layout by clicking the three-dot menu, and then I opened the keyboard shortcuts to see how to edit things. These are some of the shortcuts that I needed, such as merging two elements. Now I can click on any problematic elements like these that need to be fixed and merged, and hold down the control button, and then use the keyboard shortcut for merging. And now it's all one line. So once you learn the shortcuts, it's pretty easy to edit. And now it should be correct when I transcribe it. All right, so here we have another print model called Transcribus Print 0.3 with a character error rate of 1.6%, and it was trained on the 16th through 20th centuries in German, English, Finnish, and Dutch, and 2 more. Using that one, we got a little bit better results in 2025. We got a word that somewhat resembles bankruptcy, didn't we? And then for the phrase that says list of applicants to be heard on the 3rd Tuesday of May next, we got lint and applicant to be verred on the Mel nert. Much closer, but not perfect. But then when we look down at the list of the names and the towns, those are pretty good. So this is a much better result than we got last year, trying a different model. So keep trying the tools, they're getting better, try different models, and experiment with it. Now, if you're looking at the image and you want to see the numbering of the lines like I did, you might want to go to your settings at the bottom right and click the image tab. Then under visibility, click reading order. Then you can see how the lines have been numbered. Now I can, this is the one that I ran in 2025. And look, it got a little better, but also a little worse. So just depending on the model that you use, you never know what you'll get. The one use that I find Transkribus extremely useful for is making long files searchable. I ordered this 159 image from the National Archives here in the United States. It's a PDF file of my ancestor's son, Richard F. Dyer, and it's a pension application. And I never really looked through this file all the way. I didn't transcribe it myself because it was so daunting, and it came after I was finished with writing the report. So while it was neat, I didn't make full use of it until I put it into Transkribus. I uploaded the entire PDF file, and one of the really great things about Transkribus is that it separates each page into its own image. That's required in order to do the layout recognition and text recognition. One thing that's challenging about this file is that it does have a mix of printed and handwritten text. Some of the images were actually sideways, so I actually downloaded those images and rotated them. Then I brought them back, and then I decided to use a super model because they can handle a mix of handwritten and printed text. So I had to upgrade my account to pay for that. The results were stunningly accurate. Look how well it transcribed the print and the handwritten text. The National Archives Soldier Certificate, number 28572, Veteran Richard F. Dyer, Private Service, K1, Tennessee, we got our first error, Teun Cav, Ensign user, very difficult to tell apart in cursive. Here's another example from the document where we have actually a tear or like a watermark, I think, on the document, so you can see why it wasn't able to transcribe the full phrase of Adjutant General's office. What I actually wanted to do with this file was to search it for a particular name. So I searched for Robert Luster, one of the potential children of Richard F. Dyer. The evidence of the parent-child relationship was sketchy because they had different last names. I searched for Robert Luster and found 3 search results, page 7, 22, and 23. And right away I could see that Robert Luster was the administrator of his father's estate. It didn't say father, but it gave me indirect evidence that my conclusion was correct. I included this document in a report that I wrote about the two families of Richard Vane Dyer. And what I heard from one of his descendants is that he lived in Hawkins County, Tennessee, and was a polygamist. He was married first to Hailey Couch, and while still married to her, he married Sally Luster and had children with both women. And I had many DNA matches to my father-in-law's DNA kit to the descendants of Robert Luster, so I had pretty good evidence from that side as well. But using this National Archives pension application that Transcribus searched for me added that final piece of documentary evidence to tie it all together. Okay, we're going to get geeky for just one more minute about if you want to train your own model at Transcribus. There are some shortcuts that can help you do this. I was really wondering how I could do superscript and different difficult things, and they are done by using textual tags. These are an effective way to enhance your transcriptions by tagging specific words like abbreviations, places, people, and adding additional attributes. You can enable textual tags by clicking on the tag icon, and then clicking it again will disable tags. So select the text you want to add a tag to, and then use the appropriate keyboard shortcut to add a textual tag. I practice with this by adding a superscripted letter in the name Macmillan. To train a model, you want to have the most accurate transcriptions, including superscripts. Now, the current pricing information for Transcribus is $20 20 euros. This is a European tool, so make sure you convert that into your currency. That's the Scholar, and so I usually vacillate between free and Scholar. My last slide here comes from a conversation that I had with Andy from Transcribus. He's the managing director, and he's here at the conference. You can find him at the Transcribus booth. And I asked him what's coming up next at Transcribus. What are they working on? He said that they have obviously taken their standard model and improved that with the super model. But their next model is going to be called an end-to-end model, or that's just a way of describing it now. But it will have more advanced layout recognition to reduce character error rates. What that does is just make sure, like in our bankruptcy article, that all the lines are correctly recognized. So they're really working on making that better. And then increasing a better, more robust architecture to handle more training data. They're also making it more lightweight so that users can actually train their own, and then making it able to perform multiple tasks in one go, including layout recognition, text recognition, and named entity recognition. What is that last thing? It's just recognizing when you have a name, a proper noun, a name of a person, a place. You may have noticed that transcribing those is extra hard for AI because they can be unique and they may not recognize the name or the word. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed learning about Transcribus. We are going to transition to our next topic, which is transcribing with multimodal large language models, combining computer vision and language models in one. So a large language model is an AI tool that can process and generate human-like text. They are trained on vast amounts of data, and they understand patterns and context. Examples include ChatGPT by OpenAI, Claude by Anthropic, and Gemini by Google, and there are many more. They are often used for summarization, text generation, and analysis. Many of the newer models are multimodal, meaning that they can process images, audio, and video. And also, underlying that capability, they are trained on hundreds of images, including images with handwritten text. So, what does that mean for us? Maybe we can transcribe a document with them. So, starting with ChatGPT by OpenAI, we are going to play with these large language models to see how well they can transcribe a document today. So, ChatGPT does have free plans. If you're free and not logged in, you can only do a preview, but once you create a free account, you can do a lot more. There's an 8,000 token context window, which is the memory and how much it can handle at one time in a conversation. And this is about 20 pages of text. It has custom GPTs, it has advanced reasoning, and it can search the web. It's one of the top models available today. The Plus plan at ChatGPT is $20 a month with a larger context window. It allows you to create and share your own custom GPTs. You can create projects where you upload documents, files, images, and then have conversations about them. You can even use Canvas to create side-by-side with ChatGPT and do deep research with ChatGPT. All of these are great, but today we only need one feature, and that is to upload an image and have it transcribe that. One thing to remember in ChatGPT is that your conversations by default are used to train the model. So if you value your privacy for a certain conversation, go to your settings and turn that off. Okay, I uploaded that difficult bankruptcy article to ChatGPT 4.0, and it actually got the word bankruptcy correct. Impressive, right? I was shocked, actually. And then list of applicants to be heard on the 3rd December of November. What? That's a hallucination. What are hallucinations? Those are when the large language model doesn't have enough data to produce the correct response, so it makes up a good response. So we have to be careful with these language models because they don't want to sound like they have a mistake in them, so they're going to get a real word, even if they can't read it. But the rest of the list was pretty good. So good job to ChatGPT. When I kind of was comparing the two models we've talked about so far, Transcribus versus ChatGPT, I noticed several differences. Transcribus has that wonderful line-by-line comparison screen, and that really helps us detect errors. It has that editor for fixing the errors, and I noticed there were about 90% of the lines had at least one error in it. And the image upload is required. You can't just copy and paste an image into it like you can with ChatGPT. And sometimes you need to do a layout recognition, and a text recognition takes a minute or two. But it does have high fidelity to the layout and punctuation, and usually every single character is transcribed, even if it's wrong. But as you can see in ChatGPT, it doesn't care about making sure each character is transcribed. It wants to have real words. So you'll get more added words, words deleted, and problems like that with ChatGPT or any large language model. I asked Andy at Transkribus if they have hallucinations, and he says very rarely, but sometimes you will see something like that where a word is dropped or a word is added. But it's much less common. ChatGPT 4.0, on the flip side, doesn't have a line-by-line comparison interface that I know of, but their new Canvas tool has great potential. So I'm hoping maybe that will do something like that. The user can prompt ChatGPT to fix the errors, which is nice to be able to talk in natural language and just say, fix this, fix that. And I noticed only 8 of the 67 lines had an error, so if I'm looking at line error rate, it was only 11%. You can paste an image really quickly, just copy and paste with your keyboard shortcuts right into ChatGPT. I really liked how smooth that was, and it recognized the layout on its own. The transcription was lightning fast, but I did have to prompt it to preserve the original line lengths, and it hallucinated words. So they both have strengths and limitations. All right, I added the image of the Watt and Allen deed and asked ChatGPT to transcribe the image and preserve the original line lengths. If a word is too illegible to figure out, put your best guess in square brackets using question marks to indicate illegible words like this. And then I gave it an example, bracket, question mark, RAH bracket. Large language models love examples, so always give one if you can. So then it gave me the following transcription. P. Allen, line break, I don't know why it did that. Solomon to Watt to Samuel, so that the names were correct. It did that little flourish as a P, deed for 25 acres. Wahoo, it got the deed correct. Let's look at this in a little more detail. So I'm highlighting issues. The page number was not transcribed at the top, and it created line breaks in between each of the header elements for some reason. Maybe because its training data has seen a lot of deeds that are like that, but this one wasn't. And it added the P as a flourish, and it actually hallucinated the date Instead of saying illegible like I wanted it to, it said the 10th day of April, which it was the 13th. And then it skipped a little illegible word at the end of the first line, and instead of Samuel Watt Jr., it said Samuel Watt and. And then it completely dropped the word said right before Solomon in the line where it says receipt whereof he the said Solomon Allen. So it just dropped that. And that's as far as I went in showing you the errors. So you can kind of see it does pretty well, but we do have to check very important things like dates, names, and places. So now you can compare the very top to what it gave me. Allen Solomon to Watt Samuel, deed for 25 acres. That's pretty good. I mean, that's correct. It's just the P was wrong, and it has line breaks. All right, so I transcribed this in 2024, and I did it again in 2025. This time it had 5 important errors, and 4 of the same errors, 1 different. So every time you do it, you might get something different, and it depends on the model you used. It didn't retain the abbreviation SD for said, and it did that all throughout the document. I think there were 5 instances of SD for said. It had multiple minor errors, but really only 5 important ones, and it never used those brackets for illegible words, although there were illegible words in the document. So this is still useful to me, and I do use it, but I have to fact check it. So I've come up with prompts that help me to get around these issues and make it easier to fact check. So the errors in 2024 were just a little bit different. Instead of the 13th day, it said 20th, and then this year it transcribed that as 10th. But both times it gave me the wrong county. Rockingham was spread across 2 lines, Rocking and then Ham, so it really struggled. And so one time it gave me Chatham County, another time it gave me Rowan County, and neither were correct. And last year it got the name of the creek wrong. This year it got it right. That was great. And last year it got the name of Charles Dean right, and this year it got it wrong. So you just never know. And so what I've learned is that names of people and places and dates, those are really difficult. So if we just know to check all of those, most of the boilerplate language is easier because it's so familiar with that with its training data. We have to be careful because those hallucinations kind of look like they could be right. But comparing my original transcription I had already made with the transcription that the large language model made revealed the issues. The way I generated this list here was by uploading the one that I made, my transcription, that I said, this is correct, this is the ground truth. How many errors did you have? And it gave me this list. So try that, it's a fun exercise. All right, let's try it with Claude by Anthropic. Claude has a larger context window, but no live search function. The free version does have usage limits, and it has a function called artifacts, which is like the side-by-side view that ChatGPT has, called Canvas. In the paid plan, which is $20 a month, Claude has projects, extended thinking or reasoning mode, and a 200,000 token context window of memory, about 500 pages of text. The output tends to be more concise. I really like the way Claude writes. And you can share your conversations, and it does not train on your data unless it's flagged for a trust and safety review. Now, trying this deed with Claude 3.7 Sonnet, the latest model, here are our results, and check it out. The word said, SD, was retained as an abbreviation, like it should be. One of the strengths of Claude is that it adhered more closely to the document in some ways, and it didn't try to smooth out the text or expand abbreviations. It preserved the instances of said, but it did have some hallucinations, adding and taking away words, but it did a couple times use the square brackets when words were illegible, so that was a great improvement. Now let's try this with Google Gemini, which is a bit newer, but is quickly catching up. It's free if you use the basic model with a 32,000 token context window of about 50 pages. It does have a web search. The paid version of Gemini Advanced has a 1 million token context window with 1,500 pages. It does have a thinking model or a reasoning model for advanced questions, and it has Gemini gems, which are custom saved instructions. So if you're constantly transcribing images, you can save those instructions as a gem or a ChatGPT custom GPT. Gemini works with the Google Docs and Google Sheets in a sidebar. So if you're a power Google user, you might want to try this. It can generate a link to share a conversation, and the data is used in training the model by default. So if you value privacy for a certain conversation, be sure to disable that in your settings. Here is Gemini Advanced, and I gave it the same prompt to transcribe the image and preserve the original line lengths, and it gave us this answer. So instead of 294, it gave us 194. Alan Solomon and Wall Samuel, so not Watt, but close. But then instead of the correct deed for 25 acres, we got season 25, 1805. So a hallucination. Any season. But did you notice that it did use the brackets with question marks and some of the letters actually transcribed within the brackets? This is the best model for following my directions on that, because Claude only gave me the square brackets with 2 question marks inside. So this was great, but it had a bunch of issues as well. It still didn't get 13th day, it got 12th day, and it completely hallucinated a wrong year. But it did get Rockingham County. Do you see that? That was great. It got something, something, Auk, in brackets like I asked it, and then Ham. So it didn't make up Chatham or Rowan County. So as you can see, it has some good things and some bad, just like all of them. But overall, I find them very useful. The strengths and weaknesses of Gemini are that it had more errors overall, more important errors, like the date, and got several numbers wrong and got the Watt surname wrong. It didn't keep said, it converted it to said, but it did use those square brackets for illegible words. Now, can we take these 2 tools and combine them for more speed and efficiency? Here is a Transkribus deed transcription for a different deed, and you can see it has a lot right, but a few things wrong, like what is the state of finessel? You can probably read that in the handwritten text, state of Tennessee. And looking through this document, I can see there's a lot that's really good about the transcription, but a few things that are wrong. I thought I would take this whole transcription and paste it into ChatGPT to see if it could notice the errors, just like I can, and then give me a list of possible corrections. So I used this prompt. You are an expert genealogist. Take this transcription that was generated by an automatic handwritten text recognition AI model and check for any mistakes. Let me know what you think I should fix by placing your suggestions within the transcription in square editorial brackets. All right, so I actually didn't do that all at once. I just said, let me know what I should fix. And it gave me this list. State of finessel should likely be state of Tennessee. Good job. You are so smart, ChatGPT. It didn't even look at the image. It's just guessing based on context. So it knows that of all of the states, finessel is most likely going to be similar to Tennessee. And then Saul Paney might be Samuel Peary, as mentioned later in the text. So it looks at the whole context of the deed and says, oh, there's a guy named Samuel Peary here. This is probably the same guy. And then conveyance should probably be conveyance. Decembers should probably be December. Wow, this was so helpful. I was so excited when I got this list. Then I said, go ahead and rewrite the transcription using your suggested corrections, but put editorial square brackets around each of your insertions. This was last year, and at the time it was using this code generator, its advanced coding feature. I don't think it does that anymore now when I do this, but you never know what you're going to get with a large language model. They're so creative and they do something different every time. But it did go ahead and insert those in red, which was so helpful for me to then compare it side by side with the original and decide that every single one of the corrections was correct. Now, one time, I had a 2-page spread where my deed was at the bottom of the left side page and the top of the right-hand page. So I provided this to ChatGPT and said, transcribe this image, thinking it would do fine. I actually said, transcribe the Pearson deed, which was the one that started on the left side. And it failed terribly and gave me tons of hallucinations. and I realized, oh, it's hard for it to recognize the 2 pages. So I just tried this again yesterday, and it recognized the 2 pages. It transcribed the left page first, and then the second page. It still had a lot of errors, and it wasn't really usable, but I show this to say that things are improving all the time. What about transcribing a mix of handwritten and printed text, like we tried it with Transkribus? This is possible, and in your syllabus you can see a whole example of the chat that I had about this. What I learned from this is that it's difficult for the model to switch back and forth between a light handwritten text like this one. So I can quickly read that, I will transcribe that, it can transcribe the printed text, and it works well. So here are some of the tips I've learned in trying out these different transcription techniques. Choose images to be transcribed that are in narrative format rather than tabulated data, like you want a will or a deed or a letter, and you don't want to try a census or a tax table unless you're just playing and practicing. Use image files like JPEGs and PNGs instead of PDFs. That's because some of the models cannot read images inside of PDFs. Claude and Gemini say they can. Claude has really specific parameters. It has to be under 100 pages, and it has to be in a chat and not in a project. ChatGPT only reads the text in PDFs, so it doesn't read any images there. If you have a 2-page spread, just crop it down before you put it in. And for making your prompt in a large language model, make sure you ask it to preserve the original line lengths. This helps you immensely, because when you're comparing it with the original, you can see where each line stops and starts. Ask it to put illegible words in square editorial brackets. Maybe it will sometimes work. What I finally figured out is that I just tell it to put all names, dates, and place names in square brackets. Then I'll just be able to spot them instantly and then check them. Don't expand abbreviations. So if we tell the model to not expand the word ST, keep it as that, then maybe it will follow our directions, just maybe. And then tell it to place superscripted letters in square brackets with the caret symbol, i.e. 14 caret TH. All right, well, we're rolling right along. Our next topic is a new transcription tool called Transcription Pearl, which I personally have not tried, but I'm excited about it. It was created by Professor Mark Humphreys in Canada. And what he does is he combines large language models in transcribing documents. And he's a professor of history at Wilfrid Laurier University in Ontario. And he was working with using a combination of Anthropic's and OpenAI's large language models to process thousands of images of Canadian First World War personnel files. This is a monumental task to find all the wounded soldiers that he's looking for. Originally, it would take weeks, but he wanted to condense it down to happen overnight, and he was able to accomplish this using the APIs with Anthropic and OpenAI. API just means that people who have developer tools or purchase that option can access the back end of the model for their own purposes, rather than the front end chatbot. Well, Mark Humphreys has a blog called Generative History, and he recently announced on his blog that he created Transcription Pearl, which is something he's been practicing with in his projects. It's an open source tool at GitHub. It uses large language models to transcribe images and correct transcriptions. So it processes documents in batches through API calls and is very fast. And he was able to achieve a character level accuracy above 98% and a word level accuracy above 96%. What he does is he uses one model to transcribe it and another model to correct it, just like we were playing with taking Transkribus first and then correcting it with ChatGPT. The best results he found were using Gemini 1.5 Pro 002 for the initial transcription and Claude 3.5 Sonnet for the corrections. What they tested Transcription Pearl on to get those character error rates, or accuracy rates as he did it, he created a custom data set with images that were not published online to make sure that the models weren't already trained on these images. He got 50 pages of 18th century and 19th century text in English documents, 10,000 words in total, 30 handwriting styles, and a variety of image qualities and sources. Microfilms, phone cameras, SLR cameras, and varying levels of clarity, blurry, and some high quality. He focused on letters and legal documents, not ledgers or tabulated data like financial tax documents. This is what it looks like if you go to GitHub and you want to download this and try it out. It only works on your PC and not a Mac for now. Here's what the program looks like. It does have a side-by-side viewer, and you can edit the text on the side. So some of the features are the side-by-side interface. It allows editing within the tool. Right now it only works on PC, and the user interface isn't very fancy. It requires users to purchase an API with 2 large language model providers, Google, Anthropic, or OpenAI. Okay, moving on. FamilySearch full text search. As you all know, FamilySearch developed their own AI model for handwritten text recognition. To use it, you can go to Labs and enable that. You need to sign in first, and then you can search through hundreds of collections of digitized images that have not been indexed yet. Then what's really cool is that FamilySearch has a get involved activity that allows you to help train the model by seeing if what it recognized as a name is correct. And so you can compare what it found with what the handwriting looks like. And it works with names and places. This is what it looks like if you go to FamilySearch Labs and just scroll down and click on Expand Your Search with Full Text. And then if you go to the search and you click on one, you'll see the image on the left and the transcription on the right. And highlighted is the name that I searched for, John Dyer. So what I think will be coming soon is that they will be adding more languages and more record collections. This is a wonderful, amazing tool. Now, our last topic for today is transforming transcriptions with large language models. If we get a transcription from FamilySearch or Transkribus or large language model, what can we then do with it? Well, transcription is such a good starting point for doing more with our documents. We can summarize them with abstracts or plain summaries. We can extract lists and tables of names and dates. We can generate analysis, correlation, and report text. We can translate it in a different language or in a different level, from simple to advanced, from advanced to simple. So how do we take a transcript and make an abstract? Well, we can use AI for that too. And this is a thing that I love to do with my transcripts, is go to a large language model like Claude and ask it to create a summary. This helps me quickly understand what's in the transcription. It provides an abstract for the report that I'm writing, and then I can put the transcription as an attachment. It helps make the narrative part of the report more readable. And the prompt I like to use is, you are an expert genealogist. Create an abstract of this document that focuses on important details like names, dates, and relationships. At FamilySearch, they also use what I assume is a language model to summarize the transcription. And you can see it highlighted there on the right-hand side where you click Summarize the Document. What a great feature to include. Now, sometimes I want my abstract to be in a particular format. And so if I want it like that, I have to tell it or give it an example. So this time I said, create an abstract of this deed that includes all the people, their roles, dates, places, and unique info. Remove any legalese or boilerplate, which is repeated text from deed to deed, and summarize that. And so it created this paragraph, and it wasn't quite what I wanted. Actually, it didn't create a paragraph. I gave it that paragraph, and on the right, it created this bulleted and numbered list, and I didn't want it like that. So I said, can you make it look like this, where I have the citation, and then a paragraph, and then the witness and the signature? So then it did. It followed my example perfectly. Well, we have reached the end. Phew! We learned a lot about transcription. Our takeaways are that Transkribus is a powerful tool for transcription and making text searchable. It is improving all the time, but it has a small percentage of errors in recognizing characters. Large language models are also powerful and lightning-fast tools for transcription, but they introduce more hallucinated words and require specialized prompts. Correcting a Transkribus transcription with a large language model is a great practice, and that is the one that I currently recommend. Transcription Pearl is very promising, and it transcribes with one large language model and corrects with another to achieve highly accurate results. And FamilySearch Full Text uses AI to provide access to unindexed images, for which we are so excited and thankful. Finally, we can summarize our transcriptions with AI to help us understand them. All right, well, I hope you learned something today that will help you transcribe your documents. Thank you. Please give feedback in the app, and please contact me if you have any questions. And now we have 4 or 5 minutes for questions, and please come up to the microphones at the front if you would like to ask a question.
Very nice presentation, thank you. Okay, I have one question that has 2 parts to it. The first is, when you're using something like Transkribus, and all of the examples that you had shown us are very beautiful documents in good condition, but what about when there's bleed through, or when they do a simple cross out and then write pretty much over it?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question. It's the principle of garbage in, garbage out. If it's really hard for you to read, it's going to be really hard for the AI model to read. So that's why I was using good quality images. Yeah. So you can definitely try it, but you're going to get a very garbled response most of the time. With bleed through, that is a challenge for sure. With strike through, it should sometimes be able to handle that. I've seen that. But that's such a good question. We have to use good images. It's not going to magically be able to recognize something that's completely messed up and that we can't even read, So.
Okay. And then my other part is a little more technical. So if I were able to use the format lining to say, do this part like how you skipped over the watermark, and then skip over the bleed through, and then finish the rest of that, is that training then going to become the ground truth for next versions? Let me start over.
At Transkribus?
Yeah, so at Transkribus, if I skip over and draw the lines on, like how this was skipped over in the water, and when I do that correction, do my corrections get saved and become ground truth, or do they become few shot for fine tuning?
As far as I know, what the user uses is not used to train the model at Transkribus unless you're part of a community group that's working on doing the fine tuning or training.
Okay, so, thank you.
Thank you. Yes?
Yeah, you briefly touched on it, but I just wanted to know, what would be your suggested process if you wanted to transcribe a foreign document and then translate it?
Oh, okay.
Same
well,
question.
First, I think it would be best to transcribe it word for word with a model at Transkribus so that you get all of the characters and make sure it's a really good transcription before you before you translate it and transform it like we did at the end. So, and if you're not native language speaker, you'll want to have that transcription checked by somebody who is, so that when you're learning how to do it, you can learn those things that you need to know. And then once you're familiar with that and you got a handle on it, then you can try translating it. And then once again, have an expert check it just to make sure that any of the nuances are being captured. Sometimes genealogical records have nuances that the training data doesn't know about. So we have to be so careful with translating language to language, especially with old documents. But I would definitely transcribe first, really check that, and then try to translate.
Okay. Is there a tool you recommend for the translating part?
The large language models are excellent with translating, so I would try those. Yes. Oh, I actually don't have time for another question, but I will talk to you afterward, okay? Thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. Bye.